Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us here on this dry and calm Monday. Slightly different than it was about 18 hours ago when we had this just epic downpour move its way through the east side of Denver, central Denver, Globeville, Elyria, Swansea, City Park, Park Hill, Commerce City, especially the west side of Commerce City, getting in on this just unbelievable downpour here, folks. I'm going to put it in a little bit of context for you because we've been getting a lot of questions about just how bad that rain event was. And so I'm going to, again, try and contextualize it a bit for you. First of all, take a look at this. In fact, I'm going to pull this up for you here. There it is. 1.3 inches of rain for the Denver Zoo in 15 minutes. Now, here's going to be a running theme of what we're going to be talking about here, folks. It's not necessarily the amounts of rainfall, it's how quickly it fell that led to those issues. So think about, 1.3 inches of rain, that would be a lot for Denver, but the issue is how quickly it came. And again, that's just an enormous amount of water for any ground to handle, let alone a semi-arid climate like ours here in Denver and along the Front Range. So that 15-minute rainfall total, 1.3 inches, translates to roughly a 1 in 100-year flood event. And what I mean by that is that means each year you've got a roughly 1% chance of seeing that happen in a given place. So hopefully this makes a little bit of sense here, but you can get 1 in 100-year floods in several different locations across the country, but in a specific point where you're standing, your house, your your friend's house, whatever it is, that specific point that you're standing on has a 1% chance of seeing that much rain in that short of a time span. And we saw a roughly 1 in 100-year flood event from about Federal Heights on south and east through Commerce City and the north side of Denver. And that does, by the way, include that I-70 area which got flooded. So the area that took on all that water and led to those dramatic flood rescues, like we're showing you here, that area did see roughly about 2 inches of rain in about 30 minutes. May have been, in fact, taking a look at some of the radar estimates, may have been actually a tick over 2 inches worth of rainfall in that short of a time span. So again, that is just an enormous amount of rainfall to come in that short of a time span. And as tends to be the case with these sorts of flood events, it was in a very localized area. So I can tell you firsthand, about 3-4 o'clock yesterday, my Twitter feed, my email inbox was filled with people complaining about where's the rain? Where is it? Hasn't rained at my house. And in many cases, some cases, places like Glendale, South Denver, even here at 9 News Studios, we barely got any rain here at the 9 News Studios. So again, it's just these sorts of downpours tend to be very, very localized in nature, and that tends to lead to those really worst impacts being confined to a small area. In this case, it was about, in fact, going back to the map here for 1 second, it was roughly about a 6-mile wide and 12-mile long area that ended up with that much rainfall in that short of a time span. Now, this is based on some of those rainfall totals just into us from the National Weather Service, as well as the Mile High Flood District. Here's what we saw in all: about 2.5 inches of rain in Westminster, even as little, quote unquote, as 1.5 inches in Thornton. Again, a lot of areas got kind of skunked by this. Some areas saw maybe even a 1/10 of an inch, only a 1/10 of an inch of rain, a 1/4 inch of rain. In fact, at DIA, Denver's official climate site, nothing, nada, zip, zilch, nothing. We got a trace of rain, which means you saw a few raindrops, but nothing or not enough to consider a measurable rainfall event. Now, with that said, what led to some of those dramatic scenes, including some of those on Colorado Boulevard back on Sunday night, it's when you get this much rainfall in 15 to 30 minutes. Now, just think about taking, say, a bucket of water, and if you slowly pour that bucket of water out into your grass, it's not going to lead to flooding, right? Or it's not going to wash out or anything like that. But if you take that whole bucket and you pour it down in 1 second, that's just going to swamp the grass. It's just not going to give enough time to absorb that moisture and absorb that water. And that's the sort of analogy to think about this flood event with. Again, it's not necessarily the amounts of rainfall. You look at the amounts of rainfall over a 24-hour period. It's a problem. I mean, you could see some flooding from this much rainfall, but it's, again, just the amount of rain that fell in that short of a time span. Most of what you're seeing here, folks, fell in about 15 to 20 minutes, and that is a big problem for a part of the country that is just not used to getting this kind of rainfall. If we were in Miami or in Houston, there you can get that kind of rainfall and it wouldn't lead to some of the issues that we had yesterday. It's just a bit more used to it. But here in Colorado, we average only 14 inches of rainfall a year, and that's a big issue. Now, in 30 minutes at the Denver Zoo, picked up 1.73 inches worth of rainfall. And to put that in more context, that is more than a full month's worth of rainfall falling in half an hour, folks. In half an hour, the Denver Zoo rain gauge picked up more rain than they typically see in the entire month of August. In fact, you branch that out over a year, 365 days, that is 12% of what you typically get in terms of rain and melted snow equivalent, 1.73 inches. So just a ton of water. Again, just want to kind of reemphasize that. Just an enormous amount of water in a very short time span. And again, this roughly translates out to about a 1 in 100 year flood event for a very small area, but it was, of course, a densely populated area. Commerce City, Elyria, Swansea, Commerce City, I mentioned Commerce City already, City Park, north through Park Hill, as well as Globeville getting in on this, again, about roughly 1 in 100 year, 1% type of flood event. The good news is, for areas that did get waterlogged, saw way too much rainfall in too short of a time span, the next 7 days, well, it looks basically bone dry for the rest of the upcoming week, including, by the way, today. Starting today, we're entering in this much drier and much warmer stretch. We've seen those temperatures spike back into the mid-90s by Thursday and Friday before perhaps a bit more of an interesting pattern sets on up for the weekend, especially next week. We'll be talking about those showers and thunderstorms becoming a lot more widespread. I think on Saturday and Sunday, it'll mainly be in the mountains. By next week, it is going to be pretty widespread here across the state of Colorado, including here in the Denver area. Could be seeing some more showers and storms by the early to mid part of next week. But until then, it's very, very dry, which is probably good news for a lot of those areas that took on that much water. The ground, if you ever step outside, it often takes a couple of days for that moisture to fully be absorbed by the ground. Again, we're in a part of the country that is just not used to getting this much water in this short of a time span. We're talking about 1 in 100 year flood events. Again, here, folks, it might take a little bit of time for that water to be absorbed. Unfortunately, Mother Nature granting us a bit of a reprieve from all that heavy rainfall, though could be getting back in on some of that, at least starting this weekend, and probably a bit more of a better chance for some of those showers and storms next week. So hopefully that answers, again, some of your questions. Top line takeaways one more time. This was a 1 in 100 year flood event for an area about 6 miles wide and 12 miles long, encompassing Globeville, Elyria, Swansea, the north side of City Park, Park Hill, Clayton, Cole on north into the west side of Commerce City, as well as even to the southeast side of Federal Heights. All those areas seeing that roughly 1 in 100 year flood event. And then, of course, that leading to all those issues that we dealt with across the Denver area last night. Meteorologist Danielle Grant's going to have an update coming up at 9 News at 4, 5, 6, 9, and 10 here on the 9 News family of networks. Again, hopefully that answered a lot of your questions about what was a very significant flood event for us here across the Denver area. Thanks so much for joining us here on 9 News Plus. Once again, I'm meteorologist Chris Bianchi. Have a great rest of your Monday.